All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Smithson, Sapphire Ambassador with Flexus. All of you right now know me, but I'm still going to introduce myself in case somebody watches the recording. But we are talking about the Microbiome Solution, chapters 10 and 11 today. And I think this book is fascinating. And I think that everybody that takes our products should read it. There's some pretty extreme things I feel like in these chapters to change. So I feel like for people like the normal public that hasn't been taking gut health products for 6 years might be like, whoa, like about the guy that hasn't showered since 2002. Like even my eyes were like, oh my goodness, there's just some things in here that would be difficult to change. But it's really cool to hear that there's so many things that we can do in our lifestyle to make our bodies healthier. So very fascinating. I'm going to be recommending this book to probably everybody. But chapter 10 talks about it's called the Live Dirty Lifestyle. Basically, in a nutshell, this is just saying we are too clean. We don't need to be as clean as we are all the time. We spend 90% of our time inside. We're rarely touching dirt anymore. We're using hand sanitizer all the time. We're washing our body. I know some people that shower 2 or 3 times a day. And she's just saying we really don't need to wash the dirt off our bodies as often as we think that we do. There's all these societal norms about what we're supposed to smell like or what we don't want to smell like. And so we feel like we need to be so clean all the time. But when we do that, we're getting rid of a lot of the really healthy, important microbes that are on our skin. Um, so she's saying, like, just like we don't need to wash the inside of our microbiome, we don't need to wash the outside of our microbiome so much. And we really should be exposing ourselves to germs more often. Now, of course, yes, there are things that we need to wash, and there are times that we need to wash ourselves for sure. Um, but just we kind of overdo it in our society. So we'll talk a little bit about some of her examples here. She also says we're just overscheduled, like our bodies and everything are just too busy. Like we're doing too much all the time. We need to be a little bit dirty. A lot of our shampoos and soaps and everything are filled with all these other chemicals that actually make our skin more permeable to illnesses anyway. So, why put that on our bodies? There's a ton of information in these chapters about what to put on our bodies, and she's making all of her own soaps and shampoos and things that are edible. So she says if you can't eat it, you shouldn't put it on your body. And to me, man, if somebody would come make all this for me, I'd use it. But that feels like a big task, right? So don't feel like you have to change everything all at once, but maybe making small changes here and there will make a huge difference to our health. So I know I definitely don't shampoo my hair every day. I did in high school. I used to shampoo it every day, but now I try once or twice a week, like things like that. Um, I even sometimes, guys, I don't sometimes do a body shower. So I feel like I'm already kind of getting toward that where I'm like, I didn't get sweaty today. What's the purpose of washing my whole body if I just went to work and came home? So just kind of making small changes here and there so we're not overdoing or overusing soaps and shampoos and cleansers on our body as often as we can make those good changes. Okay, so I already kind of mentioned this, but there was a guy that hasn't showered since 2002. He does sponge baths and things like that, and he actually feels like he's in really good health, right? He has less body odor than if he were to wash his body more often. And she even mentions that like deodorant and washing ourselves actually makes us produce more of the smelly, gross sweat stuff anyway, rather than just our normal body odors. And she's saying too, maybe just don't sniff around as much. Like we're all so in our society swept up with like what we should smell like, and we don't want to smell people's BO. But we probably would have less BO if we used less soap and use less deodorant. Because when we use all the deodorants and the soaps, we're changing the microbiome of our skin. We're really changing what our microbes are doing. And so then we are going to be a little bit more smelly. So again, small changes over time. I probably am not going to go, 22 years without showering. That's just not something I'm going to commit to, but just less often using the harsh soaps and all of that. And really it's just looking at the ingredients, just like we do with our foods. I feel like we're all pretty on board about looking at what we put in our bodies. We're looking for chemicals in labels and like certain things that we don't want to ingest, but we need to be looking at the same things for things that we put on our body as well. Okay. Interesting tidbit as well. They compared stool from athletes to non-athletes, and they found that the people that were exercising more often actually had better microbes and all of that in their stool as well. So exercising can have a really great benefit to our body. Obviously, just for microbes, but also it helps with peristalsis, which is our body moving the stool through our body. So people that are super constipated are going to be more ill too. But if we're exercising, we're pooping more and we're getting the gunk out basically. So definitely another little plug to exercise. It made me realize, okay, exercising more is a good thing. Even walking, she said 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week would be great. And then she said, take it a step further and don't bathe afterwards. Let yourself be a little bit sweaty. Let those microbes really get to work. BO is okay, she says. Um, and being hot is okay. It's okay to sweat. It's a good thing. There's a lot of animals and even us as humans, we should be doing this too, but animals they like part of their way to find each other is to be sweaty and smelly. So maybe we should be going back to some of that too, just letting ourselves have our own scent it's a natural thing. Diet changes can really make a difference for body odor too. So if we're eating a lot of processed foods, that can make our stool and our body smell worse. She even talks about like these cows that are eating corn and more processed food for cows rather than just grass, and their stool and their gas was really smelly. And so, just like us, if we have more processed foods, unhealthy foods, our gas and stool is going to be more smelly as well. So, there's a lot of don'ts there, but she talks a little bit about do's as well. So, some of the things that she said will help are using a chlorine filter for the water that we drink and that we bathe in. Don't use soap as often when we bathe, so just rinse with water. If you are really dirty, use a mild non-bacterial soap and try to find organic soap and then use it sparingly. So like the hot spots, right? Under your arms and your groin, things like that, but not all over your body. She mentions getting a bidet. I think that's a good thing to get anyway. I've been meaning to. Does anybody on here have a bidet? Put it in the comments if you do. I'm curious. I see a hand raised. Is that Jade? Sure it is. um, so yeah, get a bidet. If you are going to wash your hair, she has a ton of recipes at the end of this chapter. I didn't write them all down or anything, but tons of recipes. But there's shampoo recipes, but she said even just diluted apple cider vinegar using essential oils on your scalp rather than a harsh shampoo would be good for your skin. And then she gives you a recipe for a coconut mask if you have dry hair. If you're going to use some sort of scent, use an essential oil. I think a lot of us already kind of lean toward that anyway, rather than like a perfume. I already talked about making things, if you're going to put them on your body, make them yourself, have them be edible. So if you're not going to put it in your body, don't put it on your body. Let yourself get sweaty. Consider getting a dog, cat, or pets. She said there's people have fewer infections, and I actually wanted to add a little tidbit to this myself. So my daughter has some allergies right now that we're looking into, and we went to the allergist probably a month ago now. And she said, which was interesting, she said, yes, it's good to have pets in the home, but the studies actually show that it's like having 2 or more pets in the home is actually more helpful. So if you only have one pet, maybe that's a way to get another one if you want another one. I don't think we're going to get another one anytime soon. We just have one dog, and she said it actually can increase your likelihood of having some allergies if you just have one. I don't know exactly. There was so much information that day, but thought that was interesting. So just know it is good to be surrounded by germs from pets and their dander and all of that. But according to my allergist, she said 2 or more pets is actually better. I will say my dog licks my daughter all the time and is very furry, so he's got to be doing something for her, I'd hope. So speaking of kids, let them get dirty too. You don't have to bathe them every day. You don't have to be so worried about them getting dirty. Let them get dirty. It's actually not only good for their microbiome, but good for their sensory stuff as well. Let yourself play in dirt, make a garden, let yourself be exposed to some of those microbiomes in the dirt. So just maybe even you and your kids make a garden, play in the dirt together, and then open your windows. So she talks about the microbes that you get exposed to by opening your windows, but I also have heard a lot about when you're in the same area as a lot of people and you're just exchanging basically all the same gas and breath as the people that are in your house, especially like in the winter. We're really actually getting sick in the winter because we're not getting as much fresh air and we're just breathing each other's germs all the time. So open your windows even in the winter a little bit to just let that fresh air in and out, or just go outside more and breathe in fresh air, even if it's cold, so that you're getting new air circulating into your body. Fill your house with plants and then make your own house cleaners. So same thing as washing our bodies. We want to be washing our surfaces with things that are not full of chemicals too. I saw another thing recently, lots of little tidbits today, that people use Lysol wipes all the time, like on their counters. And sometimes we do too if it's like really gross, right? But then I haven't, since I saw this, if you look at the label on Lysol, it says not for food consumption. So if you use that on somewhere that you're going to prepare food, wash it with soap and water or something afterwards to get the chemicals off, because otherwise that's going to be getting into your food and into your body. So just beware if you're going to use something that you need to use a chemical for, wash it off after with something else so that you're not leaving those chemicals all around your house. Okay. A lot of the don'ts we already talked about. Don't use things on your body that you wouldn't eat. Don't bathe as often. Make your own soaps. Oh, even not using mouthwash, things like that. But we've talked about all that pretty extensively. And then she talks about some good beauty products to use too. So again, she uses things like coconut oil because there's a lot of antifungal properties with coconut oil. I really want to try her face wash that she makes with Manuka honey. I'm pretty fascinated to see how that feels. So it's just a lot better for your skin to use things like Manuka honey, coconut oil, things like that. So lots of recipes at the end of this chapter. Feel free to go through and highlight or write them down for yourselves, but I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, that was chapter 10. And then chapter 11 talks now about like the medication piece of things and really just looking toward what kind of medications you're prescribed and just having discernment in what you do need to take and being a little more analytical about if you actually need to take those things. There's a lot of people that unfortunately still overprescribe antibiotics. And I am so thankful as somebody that did IVF to have her baby, has had tons of medications in the last couple years. There are times and places for medications, 1000%. Just have some discernment with it. So the first thing, and a lot of things she talks about in this chapter, is antibiotics. Like I said, there's a lot of people that still overprescribe antibiotics. It's getting better. I had a couple sinus infections this winter, at the end of the winter, and the doctor that I saw after I had symptoms for like a week, he was like, I'm going to prescribe this antibiotic for you, but I want you to wait. If your symptoms are still bad tomorrow, then you can start taking it. But if you start to get better, I want you to not take it. So he's saying it's available, but I don't want that to be like your number one thing that you're going to do. Let's try some other things too, because they know that if you take antibiotics over and over and over again, it's actually not that good for you. And a lot of times these different viruses that we're getting are viral. And so they're going to pass anyway. They're not something that an antibiotic's really going to do much for and can actually make us more susceptible to having more infections in the future. So I thought that was really cool that he was ahead of the times and wasn't just like, yeah, here's this antibiotic, make sure you start taking it ASAP. It was like, it'll be available to you if you still feel bad tomorrow or the next day. So I thought that was pretty cool. She goes through a whole list of things you should ask if you're being prescribed an antibiotic. And hopefully a lot of this was very intuitive to you, but let's talk about what she said. She said, if they say, hey, here's an antibiotic, you should say, okay, thank you. Is this absolutely necessary for what I've got going on? That's the first question. And then are you giving me to this antibiotic to treat an actual infection or to prevent one? Did I get results? Number 3 is, did I get results back from some sort of culture test that show that there is an infection that I need an antibiotic for? Or do you just think I have an infection and you're giving me this to treat the symptoms that I have? Do I have any other options? If I don't take an antibiotic, what are the other, or what's the course of the illness if I don't take one? What should I expect? How long should it take for me to feel better if I don't take an antibiotic? If I do take this, what's the shortest amount of time that I can take it for? Is there a more narrow antibiotic I could take that would still help? So a lot of times they will prescribe like a broad spectrum antibiotic and it actually wipes out, I think she mentions, I wrote it down, wipes out like a ton of the bacteria in our bodies, and it's really hard to replace it. So is there something a little more narrow, like a penicillin that I could take that would just knock out the things it needs to knock out instead of tons of the bacteria in my body? If I decide not to take this, what should I look for to know if I do need to get treatment? And then if I don't take this, what's the worst thing that could happen? So all these things we should be thinking about with antibiotics, but really with most medications, we should be seeing, are there other options? What is this for? Is this absolutely necessary? And then when you are taking an antibiotic, some important things to do are to support your gut during that process. So I'm sure all of us on here have had people that are under us taking these products that are like, hey, I'm on an antibiotic. What do I do? And we always say, keep taking your probiotic. So hopefully they've been on the probiotic long enough that they already have some good cultures. They're going to start taking this antibiotic. Make sure that they take the probiotic spaced out from their antibiotic. I usually tell people, depending on what their dosage is when they have to take it, but take the probiotic after, because if you take the probiotic, let's say in the morning, which most people take it at night anyway, if you take it in the morning and then you take the antibiotic is going to kill the probiotic. So why do that? So she's saying space it out as much as you can. For instance, if it's a twice a day antibiotic at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., take the probiotic at 2 p.m. So right in the middle, as far away from those as you can. Again, try to do a more narrow spectrum antibiotic so that you're doing like a smaller range of bacteria. Eat prebiotic foods. So a lot of this, I was like, yes, we're doing so many of the right things, but eat prebiotic foods to support your microbiome. Try to eliminate sugary and starchy foods. When we eat sugar, it's just feeding the bad guys. So that's kind of a forever thing, but especially if you're on a medication or if you're sick, try to eliminate as much sugar as you can. Eat a lot of yeast fighting foods. So some of those were onion, garlic, seaweed, rutabaga, pumpkin seeds, and coconut oil. Drink ginger tea, use bentonite clay, mushroom tea, support your liver, not only by eating things like kale and broccoli, but also obviously avoiding alcohol too. And then if you can, skip acid suppression as well. When you're taking too much of that, your body is not making it, but we need stomach acid because lack of stomach acid makes you more vulnerable to other bacteria. And that's part of our digestion anyway. We need to have stomach acid. So if we're always getting rid of it, we're not going to have good digestion either. I know Heather Oswald has talked about that with me in private chats before. So maybe she'll have some tidbits on anti-acid stuff too. Okay, so medications to avoid. Okay, here's what it says. Antibiotics is one of them if you can, especially the broad spectrum ones. But the 5-day course of antibiotics can wipe out a third of our bacteria. That is wild. And it's really hard to regrow it, even if you're taking a really good probiotic and eating all the right things. It's just really hard to do. Topical creams and gels, acid suppressing drugs like we just talked about, proton pump inhibitors or antacids, especially if it's over 8 weeks long, corticosteroids, birth control pills, including IUDs or anything really that releases hormones into your body, hormone replacement therapy, and NSAIDs. Now, of course, like I said, I am so thankful for Western medicine. I think there's a time and place for all of these, but just use your discernment. Ask those questions. Decide if you really need to take them or if there's other options for you too. Things to do when you're sick. She goes through some specific things, and I have literally 10 pages of notes, guys. So I'm going to try to condense some of this right now, and we can talk about it more in depth if you guys want to during the discussion. But basically, if you're sick with anything, rest, lots of hydration, stay home when you're sick, reduce as much sugar as you can, because again, that sugar is just feeding all the bad guys. Um, get outside in the fresh air. Again, hydrate. She talks a lot about UTIs, and I can go into great detail if you wanted to about this because I'm a pelvic health physical therapist. So I talk to people about UTIs all the time. But again, hydrate. Make sure this is for you guys and like your friends and your wives and whoever in your life. Make sure if they tell you you have a UTI that they actually did a culture. I know people that have chronic UTIs that their doctors are like, yeah, you probably have one. Here's an antibiotic, and they just send it when these people don't actually have a UTI. It could be their colon being really full. It could be so many other things that we won't get into, but just make sure that if you are starting something that they've done a culture to make sure that there's actually an infection there. Um, Acne and rosacea. This one hits home for me because I had super bad acne as a teenager to the point where when I was 14, I was put on birth control for my acne. And I was on birth control from 14 to 29, 15 years of birth control. And so not only, and I had tons of ear infections as a kid. So I was on antibiotics all the time as a child. And my mom told me over the weekend that they would, if you had a runny nose in the 80s, they're like, here's an antibiotic. So I was literally on antibiotics all the time, my first few years of life. So yeah, Steve, yes, I had terrible acne, probably because all the antibiotics, and then they gave me birth control to manage the acne. Nobody ever said, hey, how about you drink more water? What are you eating? It was never a discussion of what's your diet like. It's here's a medication to cover that up and change it. So I love that this talks about, let's talk about what your diet looks like. Let's not just put you on a medication for this. Let's look holistically at why your skin could be reacting this way. So, not even, it says she talks about teens specifically in this part, but for anybody, if you've got acne, let's look at what your diet looks like. Let's look at what your gut microbiome might be doing and make some changes. Let's make some changes in the products you're using on your face and your hair, and really look at your whole lifestyle to see what we can change to make your skin calm down. Um, okay. And then last thing she talks about is deliveries. So obviously the most ideal type of delivery is vaginal without medications. Now we all know that sometimes that's not possible. If you've had that, that's awesome. Sometimes you need different things. Again, I'm glad Western medicine exists for the times that that's not okay or that's not an option. But ideally, that's what you do. So she talks about in this last part, um, just advocating for yourself and saying, these are the things I want to do. If something else has to happen, let's talk about it together and decide why and see if there's anything we could do to have the least interventions as possible. So we can get into that in the discussion too, because I have talked long enough. So I'm going to open it up to you guys, and I can't wait to hear what you thought.
Great job, Lauren. So this book is like, it just feeds me because I love all the information and I can read and research stuff and get lost down rabbit trails all day long. So this book, reading it is like, I can see Heather's face because she and I will have conversations about like weird things that this book talked about too. So one of the things that I can't remember if she mentioned it or not, but about the body odor and that I found to actually help with body odor is our bio cleanse, just magnesium increase. I haven't used aluminum deodorant in, I'd say it's been a good 2 years. And I thought that alone and detoxing myself would help. And that was a rabbit trail I went down for a while. And that, like, the body odor changed. It wasn't as strong when I detoxed from that, but it was still there. Increasing the bio cleanse, I'm not even exaggerating, it is gone. So I didn't notice though until we ran out of bio cleanse for whatever reason. And there was like maybe even 2 weeks. It was a long time where I didn't have any. And I noticed my body odor came back. I'm like, what is going on? And it was that. So I thought that was pretty cool. So increase the magnesium. It is. It's so cool. And then the other thing you were talking about, there's a couple things. I can't remember both, but just the one that you talked about, Western medicine being like necessary in a lot of just like tons of different scenarios, I guess. But my mom, all three of her births, including mine, were C-section. So, like looking back as a little kid, I wasn't on a ton of antibiotics, but I was on some. But Drew is shaped exactly like me. It's like I birthed myself. Um, she's just like me. And her little belly sticks out. But I remember pictures of me when I was little, and my belly would stick out so far. But that I think is because I was bloated um as a little kid. And it was just like an ongoing thing, like, oh, Jade's belly, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't like anything rude or anything. I don't have any weird thoughts about it. But I remember that being topic, like it was so stretched out. And then since I've learned more about the gut and kids and like the baby led weaning community, that was a topic in a rabbit hole or rabbit trail I went down with little kids' bellies and like behavioral issues and different things like that. But my like Drew's both my girls were natural, but Drew, I did have an epidural. Stevie, I did not. But it is hard work. Like you do have to advocate for yourself. So that part of the book, um, just being like having your doctor support and getting on the same page with them, it does take effort. And then that's an entirely different thing. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting because I was emergency C-section. So I did need the Western medicine. But like I've come full circle and like going the complete opposite way with childbirth stuff. But yeah, so great job.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your tidbits too. I always love hearing your stories. You've got a lot. I really want to pick your brain about like kids eating stuff and yeah, all that.
Yeah, I'm just finding this book so incredibly just fascinating. Like, we've always played got dirty, but we always showered every night before bed. I did that with my kids. I couldn't stand dirty feet and clean covers, like we always bathed them. And, learning now, knowledge is power. Like, had I known this back then, I wouldn't have, made sure they were so clean all the time. But yeah, it's just I find it fascinating. I love Jackie's post the other day. She says, live dirty, eat clean. And she had her little muddy feet and it was so stinking cute. But yeah, it's so true. Like the more we get out there, the more we learn about the good germs and exposing ourselves and all the toxins we put on our bodies. I've used like natural deodorant for several years now. And then about maybe a year and a half ago, I switched to natural shampoo and conditioner and natural hair products to tame the curls and even go to a place where they use natural hair dye and um, it's all that like Avita, is that what it's called? Avita natural stuff. And then I've been making my own goat's milk soap for about 10 years. And I love the face soap from Plexus because that's natural. And that was one thing I hadn't found that wouldn't my skin wouldn't react to. So yeah, it's one of those things where you just kind of gradually have to do one thing at a time, make a change. And, the more you know, the more power you have. It's just, yeah, I'm finding this book absolutely fascinating.
I am too. I'm fascinated that you make your own goat's milk soap. I would love, maybe I'll start a thread in Team Impact for people that do have their own recipes for things, or maybe we can even share some from the book so that it's a resource that people can tag people in if they need some more natural options. Because I know so many people, not only their soaps, but like cleaning products, I just want to, it makes me want to revamp everything. And so having a good resource, I think would be cool. So if you have a recipe, I'd love to know. Or if you guys, anybody has like brands that you love of things, let's share those. That'd be great.
That's a great idea. I love that. I wish I could be more helpful with how to make it. A good friend of mine has a farm just a few miles north of Midland, and we get together in her barn, and she has goats. So the milk is from her goats, and then we it's like, and we just all sit in a circle with our pots, and she comes around and dumps the milk in, dumps the green tea in, dumps the vegetable oil, like we use coconut oil and olive oil and like a mix of oils. We do use lye because you have to have that as a reaction, but the caustic chemicals or the caustic properties of the lye is burned out during the process of the soap making, so it's not toxic anymore once it's done. But yeah, we will stir for like 2 hours until it gets like thick, and then we curate it. And yeah, so really we do a lot of drinking wine and stirring, and she just goes around and dumps in the pot. So I wish I had a recipe, but this is
That
the more
sounds
fun way to do it.
like a really fun girls' night or
And it is.
anybody night. Maybe we should do a little field trip.
Yes. Oh my gosh, she would love it too. And then we get to pick scents. So like she has natural extracts, so I do lavender a lot. Yeah, so it's a great girls' night.
So cool.
So, I was going to share, I found it interesting that you were talking about being in the 80s and antibiotics. So, born in 72, and I got scarlet fever at 8. So, what was that, 1980? And here's the kicker. Not only did I have to take penicillin for, I think it was almost 4 weeks, my entire family got put on it, like the entire family, because they considered me so contagious. I was supposed to isolate, all the good things. And I had taken antibiotics my whole life. I had chronic strep infections, which were related to my puppy having strep. Like it was a little tiny terrier who slept with me and carried strep, and I just got it 3 to 4 times a year. And then at 16, I got a strep infection. I took penicillin and I almost died because I had like an anaphylactic, first time in my lifetime, reaction to taking the penicillin. So that it basically became a toxicity in my body after having taken it repeatedly 3 to 4 times a year for 15 years. Like in the 16th year, my body just was like, stop. so so now, and I really should get a medical bracelet that says so, because it is the first line of defense for infection when you show up, I guess, in a hospital unconscious, is penicillin. But it's interesting because now I have to take like an off nothing in the penicillin family, no Keflexes, no any of that. And so what I take is actually so strong now that now I'm 18 months the other side of my last antibiotic use, and I'm still recovering. Like I'm still trying to like rebalance the like lack of microbiome in my gut. And so yeah, like, and all my kids were cesarean, so poor them. Um which it started with a quote emergency, and the other two just followed suit because VBAC wasn't an option. And so it just, but I'm so thankful, right? So thankful for modern medicine, because that could have been a very different story for myself and my son. So, but it is just crazy, like how long it takes our bodies to recuperate from the introduction of something that is supposed to be helpful. And so, yeah, I struggle with it. I'm like watching Tiffany Wilson's story with her teeth, and I know that's one of my biggest problems is I have 5 root canals that need removing. But like, that's a process. That's a whole other process, that there's so much bacteria in your mouth that is related to your heart systems and your lung systems. And so it's a journey and a process, and I'm just thankful for Plexus. I am thankful that even though whatever the scenario is right now, I'm definitely 100 times feeling better than 8 years ago before I took a daily probiotic and a daily omega and stuff. So still learning so much. Like this is the second time I've listened through the book, and it's crazy like what I'm learning even this time around. So you did a good job, Lauren. So much information.
There is so much. I had so many pages of notes, but that's fascinating, Nicole. I'm so glad that you're okay after all of that. I have a penicillin story too. This reminded me of that. So that same doctor, well, okay, let me back up. So I was on all those antibiotics as a kid, including penicillin, and I ended up getting a rash after using penicillin one time when I was little. So they automatically said I was allergic to it. And so I have on my medical records, I'm allergic to penicillin. If anybody ever asks, I'm like, I only have one allergy to penicillin. And they're like, okay. That doctor that was like, hey, wait to take this antibiotic unless you need it. He was like, I see you're allergic to penicillin. In the 80s, we used to just say that everybody was allergic to penicillin or something if they had a rash, but you might not actually be allergic. He's like, it's actually one of my like soapboxes that I get on. I'm like determined to change people's penicillin allergies on their medical records. He's like, would you be willing to go to an allergist and see if you're actually allergic to it? And I said, okay. So next week I actually go to see if I'm actually allergic. And my mom said that it was probably just a rash. And they were like, yeah, she's allergic. So it's pretty crazy. Like they just
That is
overprescribe.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah,
So mine, it was a rash, high fever, puking. It was like I didn't go into anaphylactic, but I
it
couldn't
was close.
stop throwing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, so now it's been what, 40, almost 40 years, so 34 years since I've taken it. So who knows? But yeah,
Yeah. I don't think yours would be something you'd want to test out based on what you're
no, I'm
saying.
good. I'm
Yeah.
good.
And maybe I should be a little more cautious when I go next week because I haven't had it in years either, but we'll see. But yeah, they overprescribed antibiotics back then and assumed everything was, crazy allergy too. And then you reminded me of this, I had bacterial meningitis when I was 3. And same thing, I had to take crazy medication. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, could have died. Everybody at my daycare, my parents, everybody had to take the same medication as me to make sure that they didn't also have it, which makes sense for that. I mean, it's a pretty crazy disease, but yeah, wild. And again, medications are very necessary sometimes, but it's just being aware and seeing what your other options are. Any other thoughts or experiences you guys have had or recipes you want to share?
All right, I'm gonna hop in here. I've got lots of recipes, I'm sure. Well, not recipes, but tidbits on natural things. Mainly because like my gut issues started a long time ago. And so I had to change my diet. Most of you know some of my story, but I've been gluten-free for almost 20 years now because of reactions that I had. And so that led to a cascade of things of changing everything that I was using because I would react to it, whether it was on my skin, my hair care, lotions. Perfumes weren't so bad then, um, but I try not to use them because I know how much they affect me. And actually, my sister has really big issues with it. So I especially try not to use them when I'm near her, but it's a big liver issue. If you can't process those things, it's because our liver is not functioning well. Anyway, but deodorant, I've tried lots of natural deodorants and I'm always like, okay, these don't work for me either. Used to use aluminum deodorant for the longest time till I learned, oh, that's not really a good thing for us. So I'm glad she talks about that in the book. But actually using, oh goodness, apple cider vinegar and then baking soda over top, and it helps to get rid of that any bad bacteria that might be there or neutralize it until you don't stink. And so that's what I use now. And if it's not too bad, just actually baking soda is really effective too, but you also have to be careful with the type of baking soda you use because some of them have aluminum in them also. So looking for an aluminum-free baking soda, if you try that, is a recommendation as well. Or it's how they process it to get the baking soda is really the problem, because it doesn't say that there's aluminum in it. So the Arm & Hammer has aluminum in it based on how they process it to get the baking soda. And then some people I've heard actually use wedges of lemons and they rub that on their armpits and it works really well for them. I have not tried that, but other people have that I know. So you can try it if you like, or you could try the other. But if you have the natural deodorant and it works for you, I'm so happy for you. Back to what Lauren was talking about with acid reflux and not getting those reflux meds. Something that I learned from my mom, my brother had an ulcer when he was in high school, and they put him on acid reflux medication to try to help heal that. And he was on several medications, nothing ever helped. And my mom put him on papaya tablets is what they were, but it's digestive enzymes. So papain from papayas and bromelain from pineapple, which is actually in our E's. So if you have access to that or you take that, it would help with acid reflux, or just taking digestive enzymes, which also is in the ProBio 5. And if you're not aware, acid reflux is usually a gut issue and we need better bacteria in there to help neutralize it. The BioCleanse that Jade talked about can also help neutralize that with the baking soda in it. So there you go. Lots of things that I talk to my patients about actually with that and just having them take baking soda internally, but we have access to BioCleanse, so we can take that instead and it tastes way better. So anyway, just some thoughts and tidbits that I've learned, and brands of shampoo and stuff that I use. It's called Desert Essence, and it doesn't have a lot of those things. It's supposed to have more natural smells to it too, but they can be a little perfumey. But there are some fragrance free that they have as well.
So many good tips. I should have been taking notes. I'm gonna have to rewatch that part of the recording. And and I will start a thread in Team Impact so we can all share some of those too.
Oh, that's a great idea to put a tip thread. So I've just been listening here. Does everyone have their full-on testimony in Gut Health and Happiness and Beyond? Is yours in there, Heather? Okay, good. So if you don't have your full-on testimony in Gut Health, Happiness, and Beyond, you need to make sure to do that. And then we should also start a thread in our page with our testimonies in the thread and with a picture, and then we can start using them in stories. So we need to somehow make them into story slides and then be able to share those. So anyway, I have done a lot of what she talks about over the years, the cleaning with vinegar, and now I use Thieves a lot, the homemade deodorant. I make homemade deodorant, or I use, since I'm in my bathroom, this one, the Loom. Loom now has one that has aluminum salts in it, and I'm like, no, I don't want that. So anyway, I've made my own face wash, I've made my own body wash, I've done a lot of it. Now I typically buy stuff that's more natural. I've used tooth powders instead of toothpaste, all of that. Oh, my recipes, I don't even know that I have them anymore. I have to look at my Pinterest, but I probably do. But a lot of it is like what she did. So a lot of like coconut oil, and then Dr. Bronner's soap. That is all like essential oils basically. And that is a really good, you can do like that in a little thing like this for hand soap at your sinks, and you can use it for body wash and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I've made my own magnesium rub with taking the magnesium flakes, like Epsom salts basically, and then you put them with water and you boil them and whatever. And then I mixed shea butter and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I've done a lot of it. And now, like I said, I do a lot of like simple purchases. I don't use Clorox wipes, stuff like that, like thieves, or even just soap, because soap really does break up germs and all of that. It's, anyway. So, and it's funny too, like my one friend and I would be like, oh, the kids are sick. I'm glad, because they would just like lay around with their little fevers. And we could get all kinds of stuff done because they were little. Like they would be little, but they would just like lay there with their little blankie and their stuffed animal and maybe watch a movie, and I'm like, okay, TV's off. Here's your book. Here's your this. And they would just lay around, and, and it is true that they built a lot of immunity that way. So I think just rewriting the narrative of, instead of being so afraid of all the illnesses and sicknesses, but just realizing that, it's good to build immunity too. So anyway, I'm enjoying the review of these chapters, and it's really interesting. Some of the specific, like the enterically coated probiotics, we have that, like a lot of stuff. I'm like, yep, Plexus has that. Plexus has that. So that's encouraging that our products align so much with what she's saying.
I love that too. I feel like this whole book, I'm like, oh, we already are doing so many good things just by taking the products that we have available to us. So that inspires me even more to be like, everybody needs this, like there's not one person that doesn't need to be exposed to this, because even if they are the healthiest eaters in the world or whatever, we all could make changes that improve our microbiome on our skin and our bodies. We're all exposed, whether we like it or not, we're exposed to chemicals all day, every day. And so fighting back with, using healthy things on our hair, our skin, inside, outside, is really just the best thing that we can do for ourselves. So we have like the best stuff here. We need to be sharing it with everybody. Okay, anybody else have anything they want to share? There's been so much good discussion tonight. I love this. Okay, well then I will wrap it up. Thank you so much for everybody that shared, and we will see you next week.